I'm Steve Muench. I'm a professor at Civil and Environmental Engineering at the University of Washington, and I teach things related to construction, energy, and sustainable infrastructure. All right, today I'm going to be answering some questions that people have about civil engineering. So let's go to the analog board here, and let's see what the first one is. Let's see, what is civil engineering? Okay, I could answer that a couple ways, and I'll do it. The first way is I'll just say we use math and science to make things. That's engineering, right? And we usually do that for human health and happiness and the health of the planet. So that's super generic. The other way to look at it is just the two words, civil and engineering. Engineering, that's the math and science to use sort of nature's products to build things or construct things or design things. And then the civil part is anything to do with civilization. So think about all the things that make just general civilization possible, like buildings and shelter and water systems and things like that. So all the things that you probably take for granted in your daily life. The more you're likely to take for granted that thing, more likely it is a civil engineer has something to do with it. Okay, let's go to the next one. What are the different areas or specialties within civil engineering? Well, there's a lot of ways to look at this, but maybe just a couple. The first one is maybe job titles. So if you were to ask somebody what their job title is and whether or not they're a civil engineer, they would probably tell you they're like a construction engineer, a structural engineer, a geotechnical engineer, a transportation engineer, a water resources engineer, even an environmental engineer, something like that. Those are all civil engineers, or they probably have civil engineering degrees. Another way to look at it is kind of what as civil engineers do, or what are some of the big things we address in the world today. That's sort of an exciting way to think about it. And I'll just give you a couple. Like, we spend a lot of time working on sort of designing for climate change or adaptation based on climate change, because that's happening. We do things like design resilient infrastructure so things don't fall down and break and hurt or kill people when we have natural disasters. We do things like engineering for socioeconomic or environmental justice. So there's a lot of things that engineers do that affect how people are, or the equality or fairness of things, or stuff like that, and we want to know that kind of stuff. And then maybe one more, like we do a lot of infrastructure, so building and designing things, but we want to make it more sustainable, so it's better for people and for the planet, and we spend a lot of time on that too. Okay, so next one. Okay, this is exciting. Let's see. Where do civil engineers work, and what kinds of projects do they work on? The cool thing is, I think civil engineers work everywhere, sort of anywhere in the US. You're bound to find somebody who's got a civil engineering type job. If it's a small town, might be one person for the town and the whole county. If it's a big city, there are thousands, right? So they kind of work anywhere. And the types of projects and things that they work on vary greatly. I always kind of say there's a spot for you no matter what you're interested in. You just kind of have to find it. So I teach construction. So a lot of people that I teach that like that line of civil engineering work end up building things, of course. And that might be buildings, might be bridges, might be roads, water treatment centers, anything in between. But there are all sorts of other things. Like you could work in a design firm that spends time doing the calculations and figuring out how to make something work, and then drawing it up and writing it out so somebody who might be in construction can build it. And then there's all sorts of other things. There's all sorts of maintenance and operation of facilities. Think about like the transportation networks in a big city. You know, there's a lot of civil engineers involved in making that work and making that run from day to day. I could go on, but we'll stop there. Okay, next one. Let's see, what's a common misconception about civil engineering? Okay, I got a couple, I think. So number one, we all wear hard hats. We don't. Now, oftentimes when you just Google civil engineer, it's either gonna be sort of a black and white dude with a big beard from the 1800s. There was a lot of, like, we invented like sewer and stuff like that back then, but there's still a lot of stuff today. Or you can see somebody wearing a hard hat. The reason is a lot of the stuff that we work on is infrastructure, which at some point has to be built. So you see, but I would say most civil engineers, they might have a hard hat, but it's suspiciously brand new. But unless you work in construction, you might use a hard hat every day. Another thing is sometimes I get, it's not all just concrete. Pick a building that you're in today and look around. The likelihood that there's concrete in it is pretty large. It's a really ubiquitous building material, but there's plenty of other stuff you can do where you'd never see that. Like a water resources engineer, maybe that works on stream restoration, might see a lot more, say, water and wood and stuff like that than concrete. And obviously the other one, and I've got two kids who might tell me that nerd is I'll say it's a misconception. They think it's spot on. It's a misconception. Certainly, you'll find nerds anywhere, but I kind of like to think nerd is a good thing these days. When you nerd out on something, it means you really get into it, and it's really something that you enjoy. So I think you'll find if you're happy about what it is you're doing and you start nerding out on something, I think that's a great thing. Okay, the last one, super exciting. What kind of person would thrive in civil engineering? Well, I would say there's a space for you here no matter what kind of person you are. So like say if you're an introvert or an extrovert or all those other things on a Myers-Briggs scale, there's probably something that would work for you. So maybe sort of the stereotype might be, well, as an engineer, they're an introvert, they like to work in an office, they don't want to talk to anybody else, and they don't like interacting with people. There's room for that kind of person in civil engineering, but also sort of the exact opposite. Like I teach in construction. Construction, you might think, is a lot of technical stuff, but I would say it's even more so working with other people from all different walks of life to try and build something, from the owner who owns the whole facility to the managers who are managing the construction to the craftspeople who know how to build it better than anyone, and you get all sorts of experience, and communication and just human interaction is like the premium thing. So it really depends. There's a lot of different people, but I think if you look at like, do I really want to get into this? I'm thinking like, you don't have to love math and science. That's sort of a common misconception. You do have to do it, right? So as a minimum, you got to be able to grind math and science. So once you do that, you can get through, and I think the big thing is problem solving, right? Figuring out how to do stuff given a system and some constraints so that it works. And people are counting on you for that, right? You know, like when I'm in this building right now filming this, I'm not expecting the ceiling to fall in. I'm not expecting the walls to come in. I'm counting on some engineer who's probably long dead who designed this building, right? So there are all sorts of different people who would thrive in civil environmental engineering, but I like that problem-solving idea. And if that floats your boat, or you think like, I like working on stuff like that, you'll love this kind of stuff. So like if anything like this sounds exciting to you or just interesting, we're here in Moore Hall. We'd love to talk to you. So come by and see us.